The alarm ripped through the ship before I even opened my eyes. Red light spilled across the control room, and every screen around me lit up with the same warning. A distress signal. Not a routine one. This one was breaking apart mid-transmission, and the voice behind it was shaking. I am Ellen Frost, communications officer aboard the ship Northern Ember, and in 11 years of service, I had never heard a call like the one that hit my console that night. The voice belonged to a Kataran colonist. The Kataran are a calm species. They do not raise their voices, they do not panic. But this voice was cracking, breaking apart between words, begging anyone listening to answer before it was too late. Their colony was under attack. Their shields were failing. Their people had nowhere to run. I did not wait for permission. I hit the alert that would wake the entire ship, and within seconds, Captain Daniel Hart was standing beside me, eyes locked on the star map, already calculating the fastest path to that colony. He did not ask if it was worth the risk. He did not ask if it was a trap. He looked at the distance, looked at the failing signal, and gave the order that defined everything about who we were. Take us there, full speed, now. The engines groaned as the ship pushed past every safety limit built into her frame. I felt the floor vibrate under my boots as raw power surged through every system. We were not built for comfort. We were built for moments exactly like this one. 9 hours. That is how long the trip should have taken at normal speed. We made it in 5. When we dropped out of transit, the sight in front of us stole the breath from my lungs. The Kataran colony, a massive ring-shaped structure floating in open space, was surrounded. Dozens of raider ships circled it like predators, closing in on wounded prey. Streaks of light flashed across the hull of the colony as their defenses failed one section at a time. These raiders were fast, sleek, built for one purpose only: to strike unprotected settlements and vanish before anyone could respond. They were not prepared for anyone to actually answer that call. Captain Hart did not hesitate. His voice was steady, calm, almost quiet compared to the storm building behind his eyes. All power to forward defense. Get us between them and that colony. I have flown with pilots who calculate every movement 3 times before committing. Nathan Cole was not one of them. He threw the ship straight into the middle of the raider formation, weaving through gaps that should not have existed, putting our hull between their weapons and the helpless colony behind us. The first strike hit our shields hard enough to throw sparks across the control room. I grabbed the edge of my console to stay upright. Around me, every station lit up with warnings, but nobody stopped working. Grace Turner, our systems officer, rerouted power from non-essential systems into our shields, without even looking up from her screen. "We are holding," she called out. "Barely." Captain Hart turned to our tactical officer, a young man named Peter Lang who had barely finished his training before this deployment. His hands were steady despite everything happening around him. Target their lead ship. Disable their weapons systems. We are not here to destroy them. We are here to stop them. That single order told me everything about the kind of ship I served on. We were capable of overwhelming force, but we chose precision instead. We aimed to protect, not to punish. Peter's fingers moved across his controls with practiced speed. Within seconds, a beam of focused energy shot from our forward array and struck the lead raider ship directly on its weapon housing. Sparks burst from the impact point, and the ship spun sideways, its cannons falling silent. "One down," Peter said, his voice steady despite the tension in the room. But the others noticed immediately. 5 raider ships broke formation and turned toward us, abandoning their assault on the colony to deal with the new threat in their midst. That was exactly what Captain Hart wanted. "Good," he said quietly. "Let them come." The next several minutes blurred together into a storm of motion and light. Our ship spun and dove through open space, drawing raider fire away from the colony and into open territory where our weapons could work without risking innocent lives. Every maneuver Nathan made looked impossible. Yet somehow the ship held together. I stayed focused on my console, keeping constant contact with the colony below. Their shields were failing fast, but with the raiders distracted, their engineers finally had a chance to make emergency repairs. I relayed every update to the captain, who adjusted our position again and again to buy them more time. "They need 6 more minutes," I called out. "Their backup shield generator needs 6 minutes to come online." "Then we give them 7, Captain Hart answered. Our ship rocked hard as another raider vessel scored a direct hit against our side. Alarms blared through the corridors. Grace fought to keep our systems stable, her hands flying across controls faster than I could follow. "Hull integrity dropping on deck 4, she reported. "We can hold, but not forever." Captain Hart's jaw tightened, but his voice never wavered. "We do not need forever. We need 6 minutes." Nathan pulled the ship into a tight spiral, forcing 2 raider ships to collide with each other as they tried to follow our movement. The explosion lit up the darkness outside, but neither ship was destroyed, only disabled, drifting harmlessly away from the battle. Peter continued targeting weapon systems with precise, controlled strikes, disabling one raider ship after another, without causing unnecessary harm. It was a strategy built on discipline, not rage, though the intensity in the room never dropped for a single second. 3 minutes remaining, I called out, watching the countdown on my screen. The remaining raider ships seemed to sense the tide turning against them. Their formation broke apart entirely, each ship now acting independently, some pressing their attack harder, while others began pulling back toward the edge of the battlefield. One ship broke away from the fight entirely and turned back toward the colony, apparently deciding that a defenseless target was safer than continuing to face us directly. Captain Hart saw it immediately. "Nathan, cut them off." Our ship surged forward with a burst of speed that pressed me hard into my seat. We crossed the distance in seconds, sliding directly into the raider's path before it could reach the colony. Peter fired a single precise strike that disabled its engines completely, leaving it drifting uselessly in open space. "Not today," Captain Hart said quietly, more to himself than to any of us. 1 minute remaining, I called out, my voice tight with tension. The final raider ships, seeing their numbers dwindling and their advantage gone, began retreating toward the outer edge of the system. Captain Hart did not order us to pursue them. Instead, his focus returned entirely to the colony behind us. "Let them go," he said. "Our job was never to chase them. It was to protect what they were trying to take." 30 seconds later, Grace's console lit up with a new signal from the colony below. "Backup shields online," she announced, relief clear in her voice. They made it. The tension in the room did not disappear instantly, but it shifted, softening into something closer to exhaustion mixed with quiet pride. Nathan finally eased the ship into a slow, steady drift beside the colony, giving both crews a moment to catch their breath. Moments later, a new transmission came through my console. It was the same voice from before, the one that had been breaking apart with fear only hours earlier. Now it was steady, filled with something between disbelief and gratitude. "We did not believe anyone would answer in time," the voice said. "We had already begun preparing for the worst. Why did you come so quickly, when the distance was so great and the risk so high?" Captain Hart stepped closer to my station and answered the transmission himself, his voice calm but carrying a weight that filled the entire room. "Because somebody called for help," he said. "And where we come from, when someone calls for help, you do not stop to calculate the cost, you simply go." There was a long pause before the voice responded again, quieter this time, almost thoughtful. "Your people are remarkable," it said. "We have never encountered a species willing to risk so much for those who are not their own." Captain Hart allowed himself a small, tired smile. "Maybe not yet," he said, "but you have now." As the colony's damaged sections slowly stabilized behind us, and the last of the raider ships vanished from our scanners, I sat back in my chair and let out a breath I had been holding for what felt like hours. My hands were still trembling slightly from the tension of the fight, but underneath that trembling was something steadier, something that felt a lot like pride. We had answered a call for help without hesitation, without calculating the odds, without weighing the danger against our own safety. We had thrown ourselves into a battle we did not start, for people we had never met, simply because they needed someone to answer. That is who we are, not because we seek out danger, but because when someone cries out for help, we refuse to let that cry go unanswered. The northern ember drifted quietly beside the recovering colony, as the stars stretched endlessly around us, calm now after the storm. And somewhere out there, word of what happened tonight would spread, carried by those who had watched a single ship stand between destruction and everything it was trying to take. They called for help, and we came.